Thanks for joining me today. I'm Aaron Rutten, and in this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to use the Night Landscape brush pack I created for Corel Painter. So all of these brushes are particle brushes that can glow, and so that means that you need to be painting on a dark background. And if you're painting on a layer, you may want to change the composite method of your layer to screen, or you may want to experiment with some of the other composite methods. The first brush that we'll test out is called Bright Flowers. And the color that I choose needs to be really dark because this is going to build up gradually to a lighter color. If you start with a color that's too light, then it's going to ruin the glowing effect. So I'm going to choose kind of a pinkish color that's really dark like this. I'll tap and hold with my pen or click with my mouse and just let it build up, and I can create these really nice glowing flowers. Now I don't have to do dots like this. I could also do little petal shapes like this. I'm drawing kind of a star shape that's really small. Or you could do little curved petals like this that come off. Or you could do little clumps of dots next to each other to create flowers like this. You can also make your brush smaller to create individual flowers. Or you can make your brush much larger if you want to create many more flowers all at once. To reset the brush back to its default, just click on the reset button. The next brush we'll take a look at is called Dense Fine Branches. I'm going to select kind of a bluish gray color like this. And I'll just do a really quick vertical stroke, and you can see I create this really nice branchy effect. Now this tends to work better if you put in a trunk first, so I'm going to temporarily switch to Lumen Branch here. I'm just going to put in a few tree trunks here. Then I'll go back to Dense Fine Branches, and I'll go ahead and just put in the branches near the top of the tree. The next brush that we'll look at is called Glow Buds. I'm going to select a nice reddish color like this. I'll go ahead and paint with this brush here on the background, and you can see I can create foliage with this brush. Or if I move this layer above these foreground trees, then I can use this brush to create an effect for flower buds or something like that. I just kind of tap over this here to put them in. If I make my brush larger, those buds are going to be larger in scale. And if I make my brush smaller, then of course they'll be smaller and finer. The next brush is called Glow Bushes. I'm going to select a blue-green here. And I'll just pull up a quick stroke like this to create a nice bush here. I can choose a darker color if I want it to build up more slowly. I get a nice effect like that. Now you may also try changing your composite method from screen back to normal, and sometimes you might get a more opaque blend rather than one that's more transparent like you get when you set it to screen. Just like the other brushes, you can make your brush smaller to get a smaller, finer bush, or you can make your brush larger if you want those features on the bush to be broader. The next brush is called Glow Foliage. I'm going to select kind of a dark purplish color like this, and if I paint with this brush, I can create this really nice foliage pattern. Now you may notice that if you build this up, it creates kind of a ring pattern. If you want to get rid of that ring pattern, what you can do is you can change your paper texture to something else. Let's say simulated wood grain. And that helps to kind of break up that texture a bit and make it not so noticeable. So I put some highlights on these trees in the distance. You can see I get this really nice foliage effect. Moving on to the next brush, we have Glow Grass. I'm going to choose kind of a nice bright color that you can see easily here. And I'll just paint here in the foreground with this, and you can see it creates this really nice grass that builds up. If I want it to be brighter in some spots, I can build it up really thick on top of itself. Of course, I could choose other colors here if I want to have a mixture of other colors in the grass. I can make my brush smaller to make smaller clumps of grass like this. Or I can make my brush bigger to make bigger, wider patches of taller grass. The next brush is called Glow Ground. Glow Ground is similar to Glow Grass. You can get kind of a grassy effect with it if you like, but this is meant to give you more of a dirt or textured effect. So to accomplish that, I want to change my paper texture to something else. I'm going to choose Simulated Wood Grain, and I have my scale and my contrast turned all the way up. And when I do that, then I get something that looks more chunky like this. So this could be patches of dirt or mud on the ground. And of course they build up as you paint on top of them. But I was also able to use this for the water to get kind of a rippled effect as well. If I change my paper texture to something like fine dots, then you can see I get a dotted pattern. So I can get a lot of different looks out of this brush. The next brush is called Glow Pebbles. I choose kind of a more pinkish color so we can see this more easily. And if I paint horizontal strokes like this, then I can get these really nice pebble effects. These could also be flowers if you wanted them to be. Now this brush can also use your paper grain, which will control the concentration of these pebbles. So if you want them to clump together differently, you can try a different paper texture here. The next brush is called Lumen Branch. We used this a little bit earlier to create a tree trunk, but let's use it to create some tree branches. I'm going to select a bluish color like this, and I'll just pull out kind of a wavy stroke here from out on the side. The more I wave this, the thicker the branch is going to be. If I don't wave it around very much at all, then I'll get kind of a straight twig like this. You can move this brush all around to get all kinds of really interesting effects. If you didn't want to use this for tree branches, you could also use it for something like reeds that are next to the water, or individual grass blades. You can make little plants like this. Let's say that this is going to be our tree branch. Then we'll try out the next brush, which is Lumen Leaf. And I'll select a greenish color here. And the trick with this brush is to pull out kind of a curved C shape like this. And you can create these really nice leaves. So I'll put in some leaves here on the end of my branches. If you use light pressure, you can make leaves that are a bit thinner and more transparent. They don't build up to white quite as fast. Or if you press down firmly, then you're going to get a really bright, really opaque leaf. So by using a mixture of heavy and light pressure, you can get leaves that look a little bit more dynamic. The next brush is Moonlit River, and you can see I used that in the background here. I get kind of a purplish color. And what I want to do is just create kind of a river effect like this. I'm just making an S shape. Now this is kind of a bright extreme color, but you could choose a mixture of colors here. And if you wanted to put in some highlights, you could do that as well. Using lighter pressure gives you thinner lines, and heavier pressure gives you bolder, thicker lines. The next brush that we'll look at is called Night Clouds. I'm going to switch to a blank document here so that I can demonstrate with this brush. I'm going to choose kind of a dark gray color like this. Then you just kind of squiggle around like this to create your night clouds. Now you could imply clouds that are kind of covering up the light by leaving these dark areas. But wherever you start to see these patches of light, you can decide that maybe this is where you're going to have your moon. And then you just build it up more and more in that area and have it kind of fade out. Do another example here. I'll just put in something here loosely and then find that point where it's going to be brightest and put in my light source there. And you could continue to go in and kind of reshape these however you like to add in more light. The next brush is Nightrain. And if I do a stroke with Nightrain, you can see it's kind of a bristly brush like this. The trick with this brush is to do really quick, straight strokes. So we have something like this, and we can create this really nice rain effect, where the light's just reflecting a little bit off of that rain. This works best with a really big, wide brush so that you get a lot of rain at once. And you can make your rain thicker with heavier pressure, or thinner with lighter pressure if you like. Let's move on to Rocky Glow. If I kind of build up with this brush, you can see I get this nice rocky textured effect. So if I wanted to create mud or rock or something like that, I can do that pretty easily. I'm going to choose a brighter color here, and I could put in some glowing texture on these stones to make them look kind of magical. And of course, if I overpaint, I could always switch to my eraser and then erase from it a bit anywhere I like. And the final brush is called Starry Sky. I'm going to switch back to this blank document here. I'm going to choose a lighter color here, and I can just simply paint across my canvas to create some stars. The size of my brush is going to determine how many stars I spray out and how much of my canvas gets covered. So if I want to cover a lot, I'll choose a bigger brush. If I want to cover a smaller area, then I'll choose a smaller brush. And if I choose an even smaller brush, then I can put in individual stars if I like. All I'm doing is just tapping here. So there you go, that's a demonstration of how to use my night landscape brush pack for Corel Painter. You can download this from my website at aaronrutten.com. I'll put a link in the description of this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.